Hello everyone, Silent here. Welcome back to another Bedrock Edition tutorial. In this one, I'll be showing you how to build a really simple, cheap, and efficient kelp farm for your world. This kelp farm does not use any bone meal unlike almost every other kelp farm on Bedrock Edition, and instead uses a very simple flying machine to automatically harvest all of the kelp for you. That kelp then floats up to the surface and goes straight into our item collection water streams. Really quite nice design and very lossless as well. Not really any loss from this design whatsoever. This is also an infinitely expandable design, so one farm about this size will get you about 14,000 kelp per hour, and if you wanted to get a whole ton more kelp in your world, you could just build 2 of these or, expand this along. Very, very simple concept to build upon and extremely cheap as well. Overall, a very nice little farm and would highly suggest building a couple of these in your world. One question that might be going through your head is why would you want a kelp farm of this size and what are you going to use all that kelp for? Well, actually a perfect pair for this is a bamboo farm. So I recently just did a tutorial on that using the same flying machine, and bamboo is pretty awesome because you can pump that directly into a furnace, and using that bamboo as fuel, you can then automatically smelt down all of your kelp into, your dried kelp and turn that into kelp blocks. What you can then do with your kelp blocks is you use that for proper smelting. Maybe you want to smelt down a bunch of ores, or maybe you want to smelt down a bunch of food. Doesn't really matter, but if you want basically infinite fuel and infinite experience as well, then building a kelp farm and a bamboo farm is a great way to do so. So how exactly does this farm function? Well, as you can see, I'm using the same two-way flying machine that I've been using a lot lately from Blazing King YouTube, and as always, this thing is perfect for this farm. So this thing just kind of flies back and forth. It's not on a clock or anything like that, and it's pretty much more or less perfect. As you can see, it does launch the kelp rather far, so we have additional item collection out here out the backside. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But for the majority of the kelp, it mostly just floats up to the surface here, and then we have a very simple water stream that just pushes everything over to our item collection water streams. Now, you could, in theory, add an additional flying machine at the top here for item collection, but I did experiment with that quite a lot. Many hours went into testing that, and there's just so many problems with having 2 flying machines in your kelp farm. It is way more worth it to just go ahead and use a simple water stream at the top here. Now that you know the basics of this farm, I want to talk about the cons as well. So the first little con is that we are of course using a flying machine. If you leave the game or unload these chunks at just the right moment, then this thing can technically break. Never seen it happen, but I know it can because that's how flying machines are. That is no harder to fix than just going in there and updating the observer. Or of course you can just turn off the farm before you plan on leaving the area. Not a big deal whatsoever. The next little thing is that of course we get kelp launched out this backside here into these hoppers. Again, not really a big deal, but I'm not a fan of it. I tried to fix this problem by installing a bunch of soul sand bubble elevators to push all the items upwards, and that worked really well, except that messes up pretty much every form of item collection at the top. So yeah, if it's a pain in creative, I know it's going to be a giant pain for you guys in survival, so I decided to skip that entire step and just have some additional hoppers at the bottom. So one more thing that is technically a con is that this blue ice and pressure plate combo is not 100% lossless. Occasionally you'll have an item sitting on the edge right here that will eventually despawn, but I do have a fix for that. You just replace these pressure plates with chests. Now, this is much more expensive, and this is why the tutorial is going to include just the ice and pressure plates. But this will always allow all the items to float right up and over directly into your item collection water stream. So if you do line this upper lip with chests instead of pressure plates, you will get 100% lossless out of your farm. I just wanted to mention that because it is a little bit of loss, and I like being perfectionist. So let's hop into the tutorial, shall we? Down in the description is going to be a full materials list for this farm, but please do keep in mind that materials list is for a 40 block long kelp farm, which will of course produce you around 14,000 kelp per hour. If you make your farm longer or shorter, then the materials you need will of course vary, but yeah, that's just going to be down in the description for your convenience. Anyway, the first step is going to be getting our floor in place, and this is really simple. This is going to be 13 blocks long, and we're going to be making our farm 40 blocks long. So this is our center strip right here. You can make this out of any light emitting block that you like. And then to the sides of this, to the left and right side, we have 6 blocks of sand. that go out. Now, technically, you don't need to make this out of sand. You can make this out of pretty much any block you like as long as kelp can grow on it. And kelp can grow on pretty much every single block that's underwater. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be made out of sand. As long as you make this a 13 by 40 long platform, you will be just fine. So going out from your center by 7 blocks, that is where we're going to start building our walls. So we have our 6 sand, and then on the 7th block we have our walls, and these are going to go up by 18. So the 15th block is actually where your kelp stops growing, but we need to go up 3 higher than that. So once you got your platform in place, you go out by 1 on the edges and build up an 18 tall wall all the way around the farm. So all of our main walls are now in place, and I went ahead and left the marker for our 15th block up just for something for reference for you guys, and this green block marks the 10th block on our wall. Anyway, just thought I would mention that real quick. Go ahead and go to the front of your farm and just punch out a little hole so that you can get in here and place down 2 blocks. On the 3rd block, you want to go ahead and start placing in your leaves, and these leaves need to go all the way down the length of your farm, so just like so. And then above this, you want to place in some more blocks. So go all the way up until you are 1 block short of your main walls. And this should be about 17 tall or so. 17 tall counting from right here, of course. Anyway, go ahead and fill in that entire thing real quick. And this is going to act as a divider in between our 2 sides, just so that no kelp is lost in our water sources that we'll be placing in here later on. Actually, my bad, you don't need this line of leaves in place. Just have yourself a 3 block gap in between the floor and the, beginning of your wall, and you'll be just fine. No need for any leaves on the inside of your farm. It is now time to install your flying machine, so go ahead and go to the front of your farm real quick and just install a little lip of leaves going all the way around the edge. And this kind of gap right here is at the 2nd block, of course. And this is for your flying machine to fly through so that it doesn't, stick to all these blocks. So go ahead and start off from the right side by placing in just kind of a placeholder block. And then you want yourself 5 slime blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 more on the front right there. And then get yourself a sticky piston in place right there. You then want to go ahead and get yourself an observer facing downwards, kind of like so. And that should fire. Place yourself a piece of glazed terracotta right there. It does need to be glazed. And then get yourself a normal piston right there. Another piece of glazed terracotta behind it. A piece of obsidian. And then you just want some solid blocks right here. Just this, shape. And then a repeater on 4 ticks. Repeater on 2 ticks. Another repeater on 4 ticks. And a piece of redstone dust behind both of those. Finishing off your flying machine, you want to go ahead and place yourself a piece of glazed terracotta 1 block in front of this sticky piston. To the left of this, you want a normal sticky piston right there, and then just go out by 7 slime blocks. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then on the end of this, just another placeholder block, and that should line up with the very edge of your farm right there. Going back to this side, you need another slime block right there, and then you want an observer facing downwards right there. And make sure there's no slime block behind that or underneath it as you place it. And then just a piece of obsidian right there, and that is actually your entire flying machine complete. So now what you want to do is go ahead and encase this entire area in blocks. I'm going to be using leaves because they're extremely cheap, and if they do ever touch any of your slime blocks, it's not going to cause any problems. But the main thing that you want to do is go 1 block down from this layer, so it should be at the same layer as your sand. And this entire thing is going to be getting flooded with water constantly, so you really want to make sure this entire thing is blocked off. Otherwise, it could go on and flood other redstone that you have. And the main things that you want to make sure that you do is place blocks all along this area. That way no water floods this. And also you can place a few more blocks right here. I also went ahead and installed the hoppers to collect our kelp. And really there's no exact science to how you place them. Just kind of place them in here along the back edge and they will collect all the kelp for you. But this right here more or less looks perfect. So yeah, something like that. So now it is time to install the return station for your flying machine. So go to the back side of your farm and you want to install this general layout of hoppers and blocks and stuff. And this center piece of obsidian right here is of course lined up with the center of your farm. So you would go up by 1 block and go over by 3 and then start placing in your obsidian. And once you have that in place, you can build up your little return station as well. Just a piston right there with a repeater behind it on 4 ticks, a block of redstone right there, a normal block right there, and then just an observer facing into that block. And that is pretty simple. All these hoppers are of course optional, but they do collect a fair amount of kelp from back here. And now what I would suggest doing is actually going ahead and removing that piece of redstone dust, going over to the front of your farm, and then just activating your flying machine real quick. And what this will do is it'll send it over here, but it'll instead just park right here instead of getting returned. And that way it is much easier to build up the walls around this area because you actually know where your flying machine is going to be. And as you can see, once your flying machine is in here, it is really easy to just go around the edges and just kind of fill in all these blocks and, you know, make sure that no water and no items can escape this area. Just make it 3 blocks tall. And the only special bit that you need to do right here is just place a line of leaves around these edges, just to make sure that your redstone doesn't get washed away, of course. But everything else is pretty bog standard and should be completely sealed in because, of course, this area is going to be getting flooded all the time. Once you have all your walls in place, you can piece your redstone back, place a button right there, press it, and that'll send your flying machine on its way. So your farm is now nearly complete. We just need to go ahead and fill this entire thing with water, but don't worry, this is actually a little bit easier than it sounds because we don't need to fill this entire thing with water sources. We just need to fill it with flowing water. So what we're actually going to go ahead and do is we're going to put down a layer of blocks at the 15th layer right here. So 15, and let's just go ahead and do that the cheeky, easy way like so. And yeah, basically just go around the edges and place in your water sources. And this will create an infinite water source on every block of this upper layer, kind of like so. Pretty simple and easy. And then just do that on both sides, of course. Once you're done doing that, just go ahead and remove those blocks. All of your water will flow down to the bottom, of course. And this will not be that laggy because you're going to be removing a 1 block at a time, of course. So yeah, do that on both sides. Your block layer at this layer right here, and then just your water on top of it all the way across. With the majority of your water in place now, what you can go ahead and do is install your ice on the left and right side of your farm. And now blue ice does work the best, but you can use packed ice if you want. And you also want to make sure that you're using stone pressure plates on top of this. Now, blue ice is the least lossy out of the 2 ices. Packed ice is a little bit more lossy. But if you don't want any loss whatsoever, then just line this upper lip with chests. Now, chess is most likely the most expensive for you, but maybe it's worth it to you. And I don't know, I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. You can either use chess or you can use ice and pressure plates. Really doesn't matter for the design. But you also wanna go ahead and remove this 18th layer of blocks on your left and right side of your farm. So once you have all of your ice or your chests in place, what you wanna go ahead and do is place in 1 more layer of blocks, and this is gonna be at your 17th layer of your farm. So let's go ahead and get all of those in place. And then you just want to place water down the center of your farm. Now this is going to flow all the way out to the edges. And if you built everything correctly all throughout this entire build, then it all should stop right above your pressure plates or right above where you have your chest. So that's looking pretty good. So now what you can do is just go ahead and remove those blocks, and now the fun part begins. You need to get water sources all along this layer right here, right underneath this flowing water. Now the easiest way to do that is maybe make the platform that you just built out of ice. That way when you break it without silk touch, they all turn into water sources. But there's also a pretty clever and cheeky way of doing this, and that is just running water sources all along the back wall and the edge as well. And although you won't be able to see it, this entire thing should turn into water sources. An easy way to test this is go along the edges, and you can then just grab buckets out of this thing here, and they'll all reform. As you can see on the other side where we haven't done this, you cannot grab yourself any buckets. So yeah, once you remove all of your blocks right there, just run water sources along this wall and along this wall as well. All right, so now that all of your main water streams are in place, we need to get our item collection in place, and this is fairly simple. We're just going to be building up some simple water streams on the sides of the farm right here. So we're going to be starting on the back side of the farm, and you want to start the bottom of your water stream at the 14th layer. So this is of course our 15th, and we basically just need to build this up 4 blocks tall so that it's flush with the top of the farm right here. And yeah, just build this up by a couple because that's going to be easiest for you. Once you have all your water streams in, you can then put the additional 2 blocks on top of this. But basically, go ahead and place in your water source right here on the very back block. Follow this to the end of it, and then you want to put 3 packed ice right here. So it is important to have these 2 packed ice in place, otherwise your items will have a hard time flowing along. But just place a slab right here in the middle one, and then place in a sign right there, another water source, and then just follow this to the end. 3 pieces of packed ice, upper slab, sign, and then another water bucket. And you guys kind of get the idea. Just do this all the way until you reach the end of your farm or until you have this going into your storage system. All right, so how this water stream works, if you don't quite understand it, is basically we need a piece of water at every single block. So we're sending these items underneath a slab, and then we're just gonna have our next kind of repeating water section above that slab. So watching this happen is pretty self-explanatory. They just go right underneath there, and then the ones that would drop into this section don't have any problems flowing along either. And you can even drop items into this area. No matter where items come into this system from, they're all gonna get pushed to the very end and directly into your storage system. Also, you do need all these walls to be 4 blocks tall, because if you have them be even just 3 blocks tall, kelp can actually fly right on over them, which looks kind of funny, but isn't the greatest for efficiency. So the final thing that you want to do for your farm is just head down into the inside and actually start planting all of your kelp. This is going to take you a little while, but you basically just want a piece of kelp on every single one of these blocks right here. And, it's a little bit creepy that they all grew up at once. You don't want any kelp in the center stretch right here. There's no need for kelp there. You only want kelp on the left and the right side. So what you want to do from here is actually wait for all of this kelp to fully grow up. And we're going to do this with the help of a little bit of a random tick speed. So yeah, you'll see that all of these stop growing at exactly the 15th block. They do not grow any further or any shorter. Bedrock Edition kelp is very lazily coded, so it's always going to grow up to 15. But what this will do once they're all grown up is every single one of these blocks is now going to be a water source, because of course kelp turns flowing water into a water source now. So once you have all of that fully grown up, you can actually go ahead and do your first little harvest of this. So we're just gonna press that button and it's gonna look glorious and majestic, and everything is gonna start flying up to the surface, looking pretty amazing if I do say so myself. Now, one little note I do want to make about the return station on the back before you do your first harvest is make sure you have a leaf right above this observer. Otherwise, this return station is going to be broken because water will flow in there. So very important to have a leaf right there. Quickly finishing up a little bit of redstone on the back here. If you want this farm to actually permanently stay on and you not need to press any buttons or anything, then get yourself a sticky piston right here, an observer on the front of that, and then just a block right there. And you can wire this up however you want. But as soon as you power that, your flying machine will go on its way and actually start harvesting. Of course, you could run a hopper clock into this if you don't want it to be constantly harvesting. Maybe you only want it to harvest every couple of minutes, and that's perfectly fine. A hopper clock is super easy to set up, and you'd basically just run that into this little input right here. So the reason why I say Bedrock Edition kelp is extremely lazily coded is because as the kelp is being broken on the bottom layer, and as the plant is breaking from the bottom up, turning into items, it can actually grow additional blocks. So these things can get up to 16 or 17 blocks tall, and you might be able to see it happen here if we are lucky, but it does happen sometimes. And that is the entire reason why we have 2 additional blocks of water above where our kelp can grow and in between our flowing water source right here. So what that means is as your plant is turning into items, it would have to get random ticked 3 times and grow up 3 times to actually have a chance of breaking your system. If you want it to be extremely safe, then you could put, 3, 4, or 5 layers of water in between the top of your kelp and your flowing water, but 2 seems to suffice just fine. Now, if you are playing on a higher random tick speed, then you will want to put those additional layers of water because it's more likely to happen on a higher tick speed. And that is going to do it for this Bedrock Edition tutorial, everyone. I hope you did enjoy and get some use out of this farm in your world. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. I'm always trying to help you guys out as much as I can. Kind of the entire reason why I make these tutorials. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, then please do leave a like on the video. And if you're new here, maybe consider subscribing as well. But I will see you guys down in the comment section and in the next video. Thank you ever so much for watching. And then there was silence.